Chapter 7. The Empress. They reached a sweeping set of doors, decorated with ivory ravens. The uniformed footmen on either side bowed at the sight of Dangerous. As the doors glided open, Amira tried not to stare. If Dangerous' clenched jaw and clenched hands had not told her this was Vesha's dining chamber, the craftsmanship would have. Marble arched overhead. Prisms of the chandeliers filled the spacious chamber with a fractured light. A mahogany table occupied a raised dais in the center of the room, set with silver utensils and spotless white dishes. In the large carved chair at the head, seated beneath the prominent figure of a white raven, lounged a woman who could only be Vesha. Her svelte fingers played over the armrest as if she strummed an invisible instrument. Her silk gown fell against her body like water, flowing over mature curves. Her plunging neckline displayed her ample bosom, and a heavy gold pendant of the sister moons dangled over her heart. For so long, the Empress had been little more than an idea in the young assassin's mind, like an apathetic goddess. Something about seeing her in the flesh brought goosebumps to Amira's skin and a clenching to her gut. Yet there was none of the hardness and ferocity Amira had expected. Vesha was all beauty and gentility. Mirth danced behind her eyes, and that full mouth seemed to be made for smiling. The gossips had been right about her beauty, at least. Amira forced memories of reality to the front of her mind. This was the woman who had executed entire families in the early days of her reign. Those who had tried to wrest power from the foreign widow and her young son had learned the hard way that she was not to be underestimated. In more recent years, the Empire had torched entire cities in her name for the sake of keeping the Empire intact. There were at least 100 examples of sackings, executions, and harsh edicts that flooded Amira's mind at the sight of Vesha, but looking at this woman, it was hard to believe. Vesha flashed a smile toward Dangerous. There was genuine affection in that smile, or an excellent mimicry of it. "Dangerous, my son, how good of you to join us at last." Amira frowned. They weren't late. Shazni had made sure Amira would be ready on time, and Dangerous had come before then. The three of them were alone in the dining chamber, save for the guards. The assassin's eye caught a man lurking at the Empress's shoulder. His black uniform was studded with gold buckles and medals denoting him as a decorated officer. He fixed his gaze on Amira as if he hoped to stab into her skull with his eyeballs. She noted the raven emblazoned on his shoulder that marked him as the captain of the guard. Amira's brow pinched at the familiar coil of caw around his neck. The energies pooled at the hollow of his throat and circled in a band. She would know that spell anywhere. Her stomach flopped, her heart raced, and she had to struggle not to let her gaze linger too long or look away too quickly. As casually as she could, she surveyed the rest of the chamber. There were 5 guards posted around the room, anonymous behind their helmets, and wearing a small armory in weapons. Each one of them was bound by the same spell. Kadrahan. A room full of Kadrahan. Amira could only imagine the cost associated with obtaining so many of them. Most of the sorceress bloodlines had been hunted to extinction. Those bloodlines that remained within the Empire had only survived on the male side, meaning that only the barest trace of power had passed into subsequent generations. But these men had magic, even if it was just enough to bind them under the Kadrahan's curse. The captain didn't look away from Amira until the Empress shot him a glare. He meant to unsettle her, and, though she would never admit it, Amira was thoroughly unsettled. Amira allowed the archduke to guide her to the table as Vesha sank back into her seat. Dangerous saw Amira in her chair before taking his place at her side. Under the table, one hand lay in his lap, fisted around his cane, knuckles showing white. Above the table, Amira wouldn't have thought him uneasy had she not been close enough to see the subtle deepening of the lines in his forehead and the tightening of his mouth. The hairs on Amira's neck stood up. The archduke's discomfort only heaped onto her own. He'd already spoken with Vesha since arriving home. He had been summoned to her solarium as soon as he'd arrived. What had they talked about? "It is so good to have you home, Dangerous," Vesha said. "We have missed you at court." She looked past him. "And we're all dying of curiosity to meet this creature you've brought us." Amira kept her head angled down. Years of Queen Hyle's taunts had taught her to hold her tongue. "Lady Amira Brindonu." Empress Vesha swirled the name in her mouth like a fine wine. "Don't be shy, my dear. Look at me." Amira dared not defy the Empress. "Your Majesty?" "For 6 years, the whole court has demanded that my son marry, and we finally settled on your sister." Amira didn't answer. Even if her fiancé was cursed and she hadn't come here willingly, it stung to be reminded she was second choice. "Then, mere days after meeting you, he's dropping to his knees begging your father to let him have you." Vesha's plump mouth thinned for a moment as she looked to Dangerous. "Do you have any idea how this has churned the rumor mill? Grand Archduke of the Aramaean Empire, declaring love to an Istavari bastard." "I can imagine," Dangerous said. The Empress went back to surveying Amira silently. Hers was not so much the scornful appraisal of a court lady as the curiosity of a cat finding an injured bird. "Say something, Lady Amira. What do you make of all this?" Ducking her head in what she hoped came across as a gesture of submission, Amira choked back the tightness in her throat. "I don't know what to make of it, Your Majesty." "Is it true you tried to kill my son?" Vesha's tone held just a hint of mischief, as if it were a joke. Amira wondered for a split second if there was any point to lying, then decided no. "Yes, Your Majesty." Dangerous shot her a sharp look, and she wondered if she had answered wrong. "Why?" Vesha pressed. What could Amira say that wouldn't damn her family or her home country? The assassin resisted the impulse to glance at the Kadrahan. "I know my fate is sealed for what I did." Vesha's delicate brows rose as she returned her attention to Dangerous. "She's right. An attempt on an Imperial's life is treason. It calls for death, at the very least." "I will issue whatever pardons are necessary," Dangerous ground out through a tightened jaw. "But I am keeping her." Amira shot a glance to Dangerous. She hadn't heard that kind of hardness from him before, not even when he'd first interrogated her. "You may be the heir to this empire, but I am still Empress," Vesha said. Her tone was flat, unimpressed but not angry. "You wanted me to choose a wife. I've chosen Amira." Dangerous stared down Vesha without blinking. Vesha's head tilted to one side, surveying him. "Why her? Was it actually love at first sight?" Dangerous continued to hold the Empress's gaze, but said nothing. Amira had the sense that the Archduke rarely defied his mother. But the way he held Vesha's stare, unblinking and unintimidated, told her there was no stopping him when he did. Vesha's nostrils flared. Did she know about your condition before she slapped her name on the marriage contract? Ask her yourself. Daintrith shot back. She's right here. Well, Lady Amira. Vesha looked pointedly to Amira. Amira had kept her shoulders back, but now found herself tilting her chin up a little more. Yes, she said. But you still thought to worm your way ahead of Princess Fonra? Vesha snapped. You wanted a crown that badly. I wanted to protect my sister, Your Majesty. Amira's tone dropped in pitch, almost to a growl. You love your sister very much. The Empress's statement was not a question. There are precious few innocents in the world, Your Majesty, but my sister is one of them. Vesha turned back to Daintrith. You still haven't told me why. Amira glanced between the two of them. Daintrith had told Vesha of her assassination attempt and everything else that Amira knew of the story. But there was something he was holding back from them both. What could it be that he would lie to the Empress? Amira doubted this exchange was a charade for her benefit. Daintrith held the Empress's stare and didn't relent. Vesha made a low sound of irritation. Fine. You may keep your secrets for now. We both know I'll learn soon enough. The tall Qadrahan at her side reached for his blade, though it might have been nothing but habit. Your Majesty, if you wish it, I do not wish it. Stand down, Darrigan. The Empress waved away her captain of the guard. Footman? The Empress clapped, and, like a machine set into motion, manservants appeared bearing silver trenchers and platters of baked pheasant, salmon, venison, stuffed mushrooms, roasted peppers, and several dishes Amira had never seen before. The footmen began at the end of the table with Amira and gradually worked their way up. Soon the table was crowded with plates of roasted meats, julienned vegetables, and careful arrangements of delicacies Amira didn't recognize. Daintrith took sparing selections from the plethora of dishes. He seemed distracted, as if he were sorting through another conversation in the silence of his mind. The Empress took the first bite of caviar, and Daintrith began to nibble at his food. Amira took a bite from her silver fork, focused on chewing slowly. Is Menadra very different from your home, Lady Amira? Vesha asked. Amira hesitated, but if the Empress wanted to play, she would play along. It is, Your Majesty. Smaller, more rain, but more trees, too. Do you miss the trees? Amira had traded small talk 1,000 and more times in her father's court. But now her mind struggled to form words. Something about the Empress made her feel small and inadequate. Yes, Your Majesty. I do like the trees. Not all the trees, though, I presume. What of the cursewood? Amira hesitated. Was Vesha trying to siphon information on the Istavari remnant? Unfortunately for her, Amira knew little that wasn't common knowledge. We keep on our side of the cursewood, Your Majesty. The sorceresses stay on theirs. Do you mean to tell me you no longer have contact with your mother's people? Your mother herself, even? Amira had been hurt and angry about it as a child, but had long ago decided it was for the best. She honestly answered. Not for years, Your Majesty. How convenient. Vesha's unamused tone sent an icy shiver down the assassin's spine. There was something in the Empress's controlled movements, her masterful composure, something hard and powerful. It was as if Vesha held unfathomable secrets and the answers to some great riddle. Instead of replying, Amira popped a stuffed mushroom in her mouth, pleasantly surprised by the burst of flavor. To her left, she noted that the captain of the guard had a narrow dirk strapped to his belt along with an elegant saber. Amira habitually ran through various scenarios in which she seized his weapons, but she already knew how it would end. Not that she planned to fight anyway. There was no point. Maxwell Fairfrain has promised me that the ballroom renovations shall be done by the end of the week. More than enough time for the wedding. Vesha stroked the stem of her wine goblet, almost talking to herself. It truly is genius, what he's done with this place. It's hardly recognizable. I have noticed, Your Majesty. If Dangerth felt one way or another about the renovations, he gave no sign. Amira found it hard to read anything past his rigid jaw. The Codanite ambassadors shall be arriving soon. They would like to meet you. I shall do as it pleases you. The Empress cocked her head to the side. Dame Rebecca has asked to hold a small celebration in honor of your return. Vesha scoffed, raising her goblet to her lips. You should go to smooth things over with her. She was insulted when you picked Princess Fonra over her daughter. She'll be more insulted since you took the Istavari instead. I shall do as you wish. Silence descended. The Empress's nostrils flared. Whatever Vesha had wanted to hear, that had not been it. You sit straight for a man without a spine. The Empress's lip curled with disgust. You'll subvert me and the entire court by choosing her behind my back. She gestured to Amira. But not say a word to my face. Dangerth offered no rebuttal, not even a reply. Was that how I looked all those years I let Queen Hyle criticize me for existing? You have ruled well, Your Majesty, Amira said. No one can deny that. She couldn't have said what drove her to speak, but suddenly her mouth was moving. Yet it is Archduke Dangerth who carries the blood of emperors. If he makes a decision, even if it goes against the counsel of his advisors or yourself, then it is his right, as granted by the gods. Dangerth shook his head at Amira ever so slightly, but it was too late. The words were out, and the die was cast. There was a heartbeat of long, torturous silence, while the Empress studied Amira with renewed interest. After allowing enough time to pass that Amira had begun to think she'd made a horrible mistake, Vesha's mouth curved into a smile. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid to speak to me this way. Amira had the impulse to bow her head, but this Empress was not King Hyle, not even close. Instead, the assassin took a gamble and raised her chin enough that it was noticeable. I oftentimes see no difference between the two, Your Majesty. The Empress sipped at her wine, and her smile was gone when she set it down. Well, Vesha looked to Dangerth. At least you picked a woman with a bit of spirit. Dangerth bolted to his feet as though his chair were on fire. My Empress, we beg your leave. Amira jumped, but didn't rise. Vesha cocked her head up at her son. Why? In a hurry to retire? She was silent for an unduly long pause. If you've already taken her as a mistress, Dangerth, the least you can do is not be ashamed of her. Even in the lamplight, Dangerth's blush was impossible to miss. Again, my Empress, I beg your leave. Vesha's gaze narrowed. She let Dangerth sweat for several more moments, making some point. "Consider my leave granted," she said finally. Dangerth didn't ask Amira if she was done eating, not that it was necessary, before he claimed her hand again. He reached out to help with her chair, but Amira had already stood. The archduke rested her hand in the crook of his arm and headed back the way they had come. Servants hurried to open the doors before Dangerth plowed into them. Every one of the Kadrahan watched Amira leave. As the archduke swept into the hall, the two guards from earlier materialized, emerging from the shadows. Amira fought the urge to face them. She hated being followed. Dangerth jerked to a halt, whirling around like a wild animal. "That will be all. Thank you," he snapped to the armored men, uncharacteristically harsh. The guards balked. "But my lord," one protested, his face hidden beneath a thick visor. "Captain Darrigan said—" "The captain of the guard gave you orders to protect me. I am telling you it is unnecessary. That will be all." There was steel in the archduke's voice, and a bit of a challenge, daring them to try following. Dangerth strode off again, tugging Amira after him. She should have been afraid, being alone with a man infected by a monster. But he wasn't the only monster in this palace. He had forgotten his cane. It was just as well. He looked too much like Thadrid with it. Once they were out of earshot of the dining hall, and in the deserted corridors once more, Dangerth slowed. His breathing deepened as he tried to calm himself. Amira said nothing, puzzled more than ever. Bringing a known assassin into a dark hallway alone. How prudent of him. Dangerth had slowed to a stroll by the time they reached Amira's apartment. The corridor was deserted, save for the two guards already awaiting Amira's return. Inside, light spilled from the fireplace. Shazny must have lit it earlier. The archduke ushered the assassin in and shut the door without a word, still distracted. "Why are you afraid of her?" Amira wasn't sure if she would get an answer, but she'd never know unless she tried. "You of all people should know men have every reason to fear women," Dangerth said dourly. "You don't fear me." Amira's hands fisted in frustration. "But you should." "Even if you could find a way around my commands, all you can do is kill me," the archduke said. "And you have worse things to fear, don't you, Your Highness?" The assassin found herself swallowing rather hard. Amira had seen warlords and hardened criminals weep for their lives, but this princeling spoke as if death would be no more than an inconvenience. Dangerth hesitated, then shook his head. "The less you know, the better." "Why did you choose me?" There were other, more strategic questions in mind, but a tightly coiled feeling in her chest wouldn't let her ask anything else. "Why me instead of my sister? I know it has to do with your demon, but I don't understand. Not fully." The archduke pursed his lips and stared absently past her shoulder, as if in a trance. "Your sister is a sweet girl, gentle, caring, and demure. All the things the ideal bride should be." Amira bit the inside of her cheek as the odd feeling in her chest constricted. "But what's inside me?" Dangerth trailed off. "What's inside you?" Amira was almost afraid to ask. As much as she hated not knowing, there was a kind of optimism in ignorance. As soon as she discovered the full truth, she'd have to face it. Dangerth was quiet for a long time. He studied the fire, eyes going vacant again. Amira stifled an oath. You said it was a sorceress's curse? Dangerous made eye contact. He had soft brown eyes, like walnut wood, not the molten glow of the monster. Something like that. You said I counteracted it somehow, right? What did you mean? Frowning, Dangerous shook his head. I can't tell you. Amira wanted to scream. So, what do you plan to do with me? Amira folded her arms across her chest. Annoyance made her remember decorum. And why are you alone in my rooms at night? Do you expect me to undress? Is that the direction of your plans? If that was what he had in mind, Amira meant to stick a hairpin through his eye. But with a sick feeling, she remembered that whatever he ordered her to do, she would have to do it. No, that's not what I meant. I would never do that. To you or anyone. Please. Pressing a fist between his eyes, he let off a long exhale. All I want is your company. You can keep hating me if you like, but that's all I want. I swear. Why? She didn't dare admit she couldn't truly hate him. Please, I don't want anything from you. I don't even care why your father sent you after me. Just, please. The archduke clenched his eyes shut, shoulders rounded. In that moment, he had the look of a convict kneeling before the headsman. He was tired, and it was the kind of weariness no sleep could remedy. Amira had seen men twice his age who were not half as old. I'll leave you alone now. I'll see you in the morning. Dangerous slumped on his way to the door, either exhausted or putting on a good show of it. If this was a show, it was an incredible performance. Amira was surprised that she didn't want him to go. That was foolish. He should go. It wasn't proper for him to be here alone in the first place, and, considering all she knew, she shouldn't want to be anywhere near him. But she didn't want him to leave looking like that, with his head hung and his shoulders bowed. Thank you, Amira blurted out. Dangerous paused with his hand on the knob. For what? For. Coughing awkwardly, Amira fingered her skirt. It was Ramie silk, shipped from the far eastern continent. Queen Hyle had a Ramie silk dress years ago. She'd taken a switch to Amira's knuckles the one time she'd touched it. The dresses, they're very... She cleared her throat. I like them. Gods, what's wrong with me? The corners of Dangerous's mouth twitched ever so slightly. I like them too. With a small bow of courtesy, Dangerous slipped out the apartment and left her alone. As he had promised,